know it's Jason, but it seems like you've been going by Jay everywhere I look. Is that right?
That's right. Jason's kind of the formal name, obviously, on all the formal documents, the book, and everything else, but most friends know me as Jay.
Okay, great. Well, for people that don't know Jay's background, he was recently got out of, was a Navy SEAL for many years. I'll let him tell a little bit of the story, but from from the outside looking in, Jay is a straight warrior, one of those guys that is to be respected, served this country, was wounded, has started many charities, different ways to try to help vets. So, Jay, why don't you just let us know a little bit, first of all, how you got in and when you got into the military?
Yeah, I grew up in a military family. Reading stories and hearing stories about my grandfather. He was a B-24 pilot in World War II, very decorated, flew all his missions, distinguished flying crosses. My great uncle was shot down in the Pacific, fighting against the Japanese. My dad served in the Army during the Vietnam War. He didn't actually go over to Vietnam, but he was training guys to jump out of airplanes, and he actually ended up training some SEALs. That's how I ended up finding out about the SEAL team. So I was about the age of 14, and, I swam a lot. I was living in the Virgin Islands at times, and my dad said, hey, this would be a perfect job for you. It would be right up your alley. They jump out of planes. They blow things up. They swim. You should do this. And I never looked back from that day forward and started running down that road.
Man, at 14, so did you see what year did the movie with Charlie Sheen come out?
Right about that year. Probably, it might have come out the year before. I think it came out in 91, possibly.
Did that have any impact one way or the other for you?
The funny thing is, no, because I didn't see that movie until years later. I don't think it was such a giant hit at the box office that I was aware of. So, really, I was looking for real stuff on the SEAL teams, and there really wasn't much back there back then. We were a little more secretive about what we do, which is a whole nother talking point we can address later. But back then, you really couldn't find anything. And I happened to have a family friend who went to our church. He was fascinated with special operations. He was unable to join the military because of some things that had happened to him as a kid. But he had all this stuff, and he actually had some magazines, Soldier of Fortune magazine, that happened to showcase the SEAL teams. And that was my first real view into who they are and what they did.
So what year was that?
That would have been probably 1990 at that point, or 89 maybe.
Man, so see, the thing that is crazy to me is thinking, I grew up reading a bunch of books about SEALs, about a lot of the SEALs back in Vietnam, reading about BUDS, about all the training, and it's almost like people that can go through that training from the outsider looking in, honestly, you guys are superhuman. So when you got in, was it a little bit of a shock, or did you have already an idea of what it was going to be? Because I can't imagine. I remember I had a teacher that was a Navy SEAL in high school, and he said luckily he honestly didn't know anything about it before he went into the training, because he's like, if I would have known, there's no way in hell I would have done this, because he said he wouldn't have made it.
Yeah, I had a decent idea of what I was getting myself into, and I wouldn't say that we're superhuman. I tell a lot of people, I talk about it, everybody in life faces adversity, and I think any type of adversity, even special operations training, it's a mental commitment to be willing to endure more, to endure more pain, to endure more discomfort than the guy next to you. That's really it. I mean, we have guys that show up in training. I have a friend that showed up to training, he couldn't even swim. Yet he made it through because he had the mental commitment that no matter what happened, he was going to make it. And that's kind of the mindset that I took when I got there. I said, no matter what happens, I'll die before I quit. And I think those are the guys that have the mindset that will make it through training.
That's got to be. I know. I feel like I grew up in middle school, high school. And I used to read everything, like I just referenced before. But I had those kind of dreams as a kid, and I was probably 8th grade, 9th grade, and thinking, man, how crazy would that be? Let's do it. And then, of course, like every other person, I'm scared to death. I'm like, there's no way I could make it through that. I'd always have those days when you felt really good. Or you'd be running and working out. You're like, man, yeah, I could do this. Let's do it. But then, like everybody, we're scared to kind of make that commitment. What do you think it is for you guys that you guys have that switch, that you could kind of turn on and take it head on? Because that's honestly putting yourself really out in the most uncomfortable possible situation ever.
No, I think, once again, it comes back to just that idea that you're willing to throw it out there. You're willing to do it. Everybody has fear. I say we're ordinary guys who happen to have been blessed to do an extraordinary job. You're the same. Some of these other guys out there, we all have these unique traits that we have. I think the guys that have the traits to be special operations have intense mental hardness. And but there's still fear. You're always going to wander. You're always going to wander into situations like that. It's the fear of the unknown. Do I have the ability to endure this and make it through it? And it's no different when you're overseas and you're doing combat operations. There's only one group of people in this world that have no fear, and that's the mentally insane. So courage is merely the ability to handle fear. It's the ability to go out there into the unknown, whether it's buds, whether it's a combat mission, whether it's jumping out of the back of a perfectly good airplane and saying, well, I've weighed all the risks, I've done all I can do, and now I'm going.
Yeah, and the thing that I think you have to be one of the few guys or a small group of guys that you got to see the military and being a SEAL and special operations pre-9/11 and also post 9/11. Can you let us know a little bit, like, how different was it back then before the planes hit the World Trade Center and now afterwards?
Night and day. Really, it was. I mean, we were still operating off a lot of our the last time the SEAL teams had seen sustained combat was Vietnam. So we were still operating off a lot of those old lessons. That was the tactics and everything that we were learning from. And it was a peacetime military. So we did a lot of training. We used to talk about it. It was kind of like, we'd use a football analogy, and it would be like, training and training and training to try and get to this Super Bowl level, but you're never allowed to play a single game. And at times it was frustrating. And, I used to call it war chasing. Guys, there'd be little hot spots that would spring up around the world, and every guy would try and get assigned to that team or unit that might have a chance of getting to this little skirmish that was out there. And it was funny. And then all of a sudden, 9/11 happened. Everything changed. All our tactics changed, the way we did things, the way we were structured, even we realized very quickly that the nature of this war, both in Iraq and Afghanistan, was vastly different from everything we've done in the past. So it really caused us to have to reinvent a lot of things we did.
Where were you when the planes hit the World Trade Center?
So I was at school. I was a prior enlisted guy who had been selected for a commissioning program, and I started at Old Dominion University, still on active duty as an enlisted member, but it was my job to go to school and get my degree. So I started in August, and so I'd only been in school for 6 weeks. And I came out of class, and I'll never forget, I was getting a cup of coffee at Starbucks in the Student Center, and the kid behind the counter handed me my coffee, and he kind of joked, and he said, man, the world's coming to an end. He said, a plane crashed into the World Trade Center, and the Pentagon's on fire. And I was like, what? And they said, yeah, man, go check it out on the TV. And I walked around, and at that point, I saw the World Trade Center burning, and I saw that, a plane had hit the Pentagon. And I sat there and watched with everybody else, and on live television, I saw the second plane hit. And I knew in that moment we were at war. I knew that we were under attack. And my buddy and I, we were at school together. We were both SEALs, and we looked at each other, and we said, hey, it's go time.
So how does that work? Since you were commissioned to be a part of that program and go to school, are you immediately taken out of school and sent somewhere?
No, I tried to take myself out of school. Actually, the next day I drove back to my old SEAL team and my old commanding officer, and I said, hey, I don't want to be in this program anymore. I know we're going to war. I want to be back in a platoon. And a very wise, probably one of the best leaders we have in the SEAL teams, I talk a lot about him in my book, Vince Peterson. I mean, the epitome of leadership. I mean, if this guy this guy asked me to follow him into hell in a propane truck, I'd do it. I mean, that's the kind of leader he was. And I went there and I said, hey, sir, you know, I don't want to be in this program. I want to be with my brothers as we go overseas to confront this enemy. And he looked at me and he said, you know, my nickname was Red. And he said, Red, he said, this is going to be a long war. He said, you need to recognize this. This is not going to be over quickly. It's going to be a very hard-fought war that's going to last years. And he said, because this is a war against ideology. He said, you need to stay in school. You need to learn how to be a good leader and then come back and lead. And I'd love to say I took his advice and crushed it. And I did go back to school, but I made some mistakes as a young leader before I finally took his advice to heart and figured out what it was to be a good leader of men.
Man, yeah, you referenced your book there. I mean, you guys people can see in the background that are watching the video. You know, his book is called The Trident: The Forging and Reforging of a Navy SEAL Leader. And I think right now, I know you've been making the rounds, so thank you very much for making some time to come on here, because I know it's busy work, as well as you just had a big gala to, I know, honor some wounded warriors and raise money, so that's amazing. But in that book, what you just said, you said you made some decisions, and you referenced being, I don't know if you want to call it arrogant, or however, you just needed almost like an attitude adjustment, or whatever it was you were saying. You kind of were just living and acting the way that you didn't want to, and you learned a valuable lesson. And can you take us through what that was and when it happened?
Yeah, no, absolutely I was arrogant. I mean, there's no beating around the bush there.
You need to be, though. I mean, is that...
Well, no, I disagree. There is
confidence,
arrogance and there is confidence.
Yeah.
There's confidence in your abilities, and then there's arrogance. And I unfortunately confused the two. And we all know those types of people that, you know, they'll get things done, but they will leave a path of destruction behind them. You know, they will burn every bridge along the way, and they'll accomplish what they set out to do. But people just, they hate that guy when it's all said and done. And that was the guy who I was when I was younger. And, you know, going forward into combat, you just can't be that kind of person. And I made some mistakes. You know, there's also levels of leadership. I talk about if you're going to lead, you got to lead always. So, you know, between hanging out with the boys too late and burning it down at night drinking hurts your credibility as a leader. And all of that, you know, I had a bad relationship with one of my senior enlisted. That was kind of hurting my credibility, not managing that well. And all of that came to head with a mission we conducted in Afghanistan where we were holding some high ground. I was in a position holding some high ground. We had a bunch of guys go down in the valley and get in a big firefight. And I wanted to get in the fight. And I took myself and a machine gunner out of that position, that high ground, and wanted to move down into that valley. And, you know, people that understand tactics, there's a lot of tactical problems with this. And it really exposed some people to, you know, to potentially some bad situations with the inability to call an air sport and all these other things. But thankfully, nothing happened. But instead, I got called on the carpet, and all the issues, you know, my arrogance, you know, things that I had done, you know, poor decisions I'd made as a leader, I was confronted with. And I was told, hey, you know, we think you have the potential to be a good leader, but, you know, if you don't pull it together, you know, we're going to send you packing. We're going to take your trident, which for a SEAL, that is like the greatest. I mean, earning your trident takes almost 2 years to finally earn what is the emblem for the SEAL teams. And to be faced with the prospect after all those years of trying to earn it, that they said, hey, you know, you need to shape up. So it was a very humbling experience.
If they did take your trident, like say they do, obviously it's been taken from guys, do they put you on a submarine or on a boat? What do they do? Or are you completely out of the Navy?
No, you would go to, you would get sent, and there are guys that have done it. There are guys that have gotten in trouble and they've lost their tridents and they've gone exactly out to the Navy to be on a ship or on a submarine or wherever else the Navy deems.
That's got to be a nightmare for a SEAL, I'm guessing. To be trapped.
Our community is pretty unique. We're probably about the most unconventional unit in the entire military, just how we do things. So to have to go back to the conventional side of the military, and also knowing that you were a SEAL and you lost your trident, and then have to. There are a few guys that have earned their way back, but most of the time, if you lose your trident, it's pretty much a a death sentence.
Oh gosh, man, yeah, I'm sure, and that's why I think kind of the aura or the secret, everything you guys do is secretive. You know, you guys are the ones that do everything, sea, air, and land, and that's what kind of drew myself to reading about you guys and trying to watch documentaries on buds and your training and what you go through, because everything you read says, you know, there's obviously every branch of the military is hugely respected, but the SEALs are like just another step up because there's nothing you guys don't do, it seems like. And so do you guys, when you become a SEAL, or say you're training to become a SEAL, do you guys view, I don't know how to phrase it, but without sounding like making you sound arrogant, I don't want to make you try to sound bad, but do you guys view yourselves up there with above every other special forces, every other branch of the military?
No, not at all. I mean, we don't view ourselves above.
You work with them, though, right? Don't you? Too?
Exactly. You know, there's always that rivalry that occurs. I mean, I'm sure it occurs it happens anywhere. I mean, it occurs on the football field, it occurs in other locations, and it occurs in special operations. I mean, you know, actions speak louder than words. So we don't go around, we don't look at ourselves better, but we bust our butts to make sure, you know, that's why we train at the highest level. You know, we do everything we can to create the worst situation we possibly can think of. And the results show. I mean, on the battlefield over the last 12 years, I mean, the SEAL teams have done some pretty amazing things. Now, flip side of that coin, you know, a lot of special operations units have done amazing things. You know, the Green Berets, the Rangers, Air Force Special Operations, and the Marines, all these guys are playing their part. You know, are we tasked with doing a pretty high-level mission? At times, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an idiot. What a stupid question. Like, I'm going to sit there and have you say, of course, yeah, we're the best. And when you're friends with these guys, you have them, you see them at functions all the time. You're trying to get them probably to donate money to your cause. And I want you to sit here and tell everybody that you guys are better and you guys are the king of the hill. So, yeah, what a stupid way to phrase a question by me. But
No. We are. But no, I'm kidding.
Yeah, man, hey. That's the best part is, like you said, I'm sure it's a great.
I have the privilege of working with virtually every unit of the military, every branch, every special operations unit, and you know, there are stars across the board. I mean, it really is impressive. This current military that we have, which is sad because right now there's just massive cuts that are occurring. And you're cutting the United States military and the units that we have. There is no other force on this planet in the history of this world that is more battle-proven and battle-capable than the United States military right now. And it'll be interesting to see if we can keep that competency that we have.
Yeah, trust me, I think it's every time I hear of a cut of military spending, it pisses me off because I understand. I'm sure there's some people that are playing the system and obviously spending too much or, you know, pocketing some money behind the scenes, but we're the USA for a reason. You know, you guys have been killing it forever to protect this country. So I say you guys have an open credit card to get whatever you want. We just need a couple solid leaders in there at the top to make sure they're not skimming off the top, I guess. But I don't know. It's a lot harder than that.
Yeah, there's a lot of issues that got to be addressed across this country, but. We'll get back to you know, the problems that we can solve right now. And
yeah, man, there's a lot of moving parts. I don't claim to have any answers. I'm just an idiot sitting here on a computer. So, when you said that about how we send people to war changed? Meaning, obviously we have, you know, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. We send them everywhere, but now it seems like over the last, I have no idea how long they've been in there, but like companies like Blackwater, I know Blackwater's changed names now, and they're private contractors. Is that huge now everywhere you look?
It's, I mean, yes and no. I think the contractor, for a while there, was massive. And I think the thing was, it was easier to find contractors to be able to do some of these different jobs that were over there that the military just couldn't do. I mean, there's a lot of logistics of war, you know, outside of the military. I mean, we were trying to nation build and support Iraq and in Afghanistan. So you had U.S. people that were going over there. So they'd use contractors to provide the security both for houses, convoys, all those different things. So I think you're always going to have that with war. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. It's an all-volunteer force. We don't have this unlimited number of military members that we can just farm out to do all these, like security jobs and things like that. So in the long run, it appears that it's cheaper for the United States government than to try and push soldiers and equipment and all this other stuff out there. Now, granted, we've seen the problems that have occurred with some of the contractors that are out there. But most of them were pretty good. I mean, I've interfaced with some of those guys over there. Most of them were pretty good. I have friends that are doing it now, obviously.
Yeah, did that while you were say when you were serving, did that ever cross your mind? You thinking like, when I got out, I'm gonna go do this? Because I would say the example I would use is thinking. Tell me if I'm way off base, but say guys, and he's say you're out, you're serving what was your normal tour of duty? Did you have a normal? I mean, you're special ops, so you're.
Yeah, I mean, it could depend. I mean, anywhere from a 4-month deployment all the way to, I have friends that have done over a year-long deployment. Thankfully, I never did one of those.
Yeah, so say like a guy's in the Army, and he has a year deployment over there somewhere in Afghanistan or Iraq, and just for, say he's getting $50,000 for the year, and say a private contractor's over there for 9 months, he's making $150,000. Did that ever cross your mind thinking, man, you can make some big cash by doing similar things?
It never crossed my mind, but it was a real problem in the military. For a while there, in the beginning of the war, or in the first 4 or 5 years of the war, yeah, you're right, contractors were killing it. Those guys were making a ton of money for being over there. We lost a lot of guys that decided the pay was better. The problem is contractors didn't have the assets that we did. So it was great money, but they would get into a bad situation, and you didn't have the air support and all the things. 90% of the time, the contractors would get in trouble, and the U.S. military would have to come support them. I mean, the incident at Blackwater Bridge is a perfect example of those guys getting into a bad situation and were totally overrun. All 4 of those guys were killed. And, that's the reality. And I think a lot of us recognize that. You could go do it, but you were, you'd be getting the money, but you were taking on a much higher risk.
Money doesn't do it. Yeah. And if you're dead, money doesn't work. Your family likes it.
Exactly. So nowadays, the contractor payment scales come down significantly. So it's not what it was at the beginning of the war. So some guys still do it. It's there. I never looked at it. I said, even before I got wounded, I said, I had planned on doing 30 years. And I said, once I'm done with this job, I'm hanging up the guns.
Just a measly 30 years, that's all you were trying to commit to?
That was it.
Just a quick 30?
Well, I would have gone longer than 30 years, depending on what was happening. I had my goals. I wanted to, serve in some key leadership positions within the SEAL teams. And obviously one night of not moving fast enough put a stop to that.
All right, yeah. Why don't you I almost feel bad because I try to read, read most of your book and watched some of your interviews you've done and different things. And I feel terrible even asking you because it seems like you have to probably live it every day and keep telling the story. But can you just maybe give us the Cliff Notes version just for your sake of how you got hurt and when you got wounded and shot and 37-some surgeries and all kinds of recovery. Can you just take us through that day, I guess, when you were wounded?
Yeah, and I don't mind. It doesn't bother me anymore. Okay. So, we were at the serving in Iraq in the Al Anbar province of Iraq. We were at the very end of our deployment. This was in the summer of 2007, spring into the summer of 2007, and very volatile time in Iraq. It was the beginning of the Anbar awakening, and 2006 and 07 in Iraq was really the wild, wild west. In the Fallujah, Ramadi, all out there in Anbar. So we had been hitting it pretty hard. Almost every night, every other night, we were going out and executing pretty hard missions. And we had a lot of close calls, and we were finally at the end of the deployment. We had packed everything up except for our immediate weapons and gear so that we could still execute something we call time-sensitive targets. If we get information that a key leader we've been waiting for is at a specific location, then we can go after them. And that's exactly what happened. we got word that a guy we'd been tracking all deployment happened to be in a specific location, and grabbed our gear and launched on that mission. And I was the head of one assault team that was actually taking down the building itself, and then we had the other assault team that was tasked with providing the external security. We went in and took down our target. We expected very heavy resistance just from the nature of who this guy was. And amazingly, we entered our target and nothing happened. We started searching. We started finding all this stuff, weapons, hidden caches. And while they were collecting that stuff and we're getting ready to blow it up, we started seeing a lot of movement on another target about 200 yards away. So my boss told me, hey, take your assault team. I want you to maneuver on those guys that are out there. So we maneuvered around. What we failed to realize, though, is when those guys had moved out earlier in the day, they had already pre-staged fighting positions and PKM machine guns and weapons, and we walked right into an ambush situation. And my medic was hit first, a round directly through right below his knee, took him down. I was hit, I think, second. One of our other guys was stitched next, so I was stitched across the body armor, 2 rounds in the left elbow, and then across the body, across my weapon. I took a round off the helmet, left night vision tube shot off, and then I got up to move back, thinking that my arm had been shot off, and I took a round through the face at that point, catching me right in front of the ear. And it traveled through. It took off my nose, right cheekbone, shattered all the bones above my eye, and shattered my jaw. So that started a whole new journey.
Jeez.
Overcoming and getting put back together. So 4 years and 37 surgeries.
Gosh, man. I mean, I've heard you. I've watched a couple things, or just seen you, kind of tell the story about it, but it's crazy to have you actually tell it right here to my face over the computer. That it's just it gives me chills, man. That's I don't even know where to begin, but how many times did you get shot completely or total?
3 to the body, so 2 to my left elbow. I took one at the base of my bicep and then 1 on the inside of my forearm. So they almost couldn't have done better destroying my elbow. And they actually looked at amputating it in the beginning just for the level of damage that I had. Thankfully, and talk about fate, my ortho doc at Bethesda happened to be a former SEAL.
Really?
And, so he fought to keep my arm and saved it, thank God. And then I took the round to the face. Everything else, thankfully, was body armor, front plate, side plate, weapon, helmet, night vision goggles. So...
And it was what do you say, it was like 45, 50 yards or feet away? How close?
Feet.
Feet?
Yeah, 45 feet from the machine gun that was in front of me. So we ended up calling in close air support that night. So one of the Air Force AC-130 gunships. And it ended up being, when you call in close air support, rounds and bombs and stuff like that have a standoff radius. When they explode, there's a certain distance that they cast fragmentation. So we call that distance a danger close area. So you have to be outside that danger close area when you're calling in air support. Well, that night when my team leader was trying to call in this air support, they were like, there's no way, we'll kill you guys. And finally he said, listen, if you don't call in this air support, there's not going to be anybody left. So they basically said, okay, well, we're putting the onus on you. If anybody dies, it's your fault. And he said, hey, roger that. I don't care. Let's do it. So he started walking the rounds in. So that was, to this day, it was the closest fire mission in the entire Iraq war, the closest danger close air support that was ever called in Iraq.
Man, and when you got shot, was it all bam at the same time, like the same burst, or was there a delay between getting shot in the body and then when you took the one through the back of the face, or what? Yeah,
there was a delay. The first time it stitched me across the body, and that's when I was hit in the arm. So, and I realized I was still aware. I was trying to shoot and move and communicate with our guys, but I had thought my arm had been shot off. So we teach, you can't stop in the middle of a firefight and call timeout and be like, hey, somebody come over here and fix me. You know, when bullets are flying, you know, we train. You've got to take care of yourself first. You know, let the guys win the fight, and we train, you know, to put on our own tourniquet. So I dropped down to get my own tourniquet on, and at that point started taking some more fire. I got up to try and move back to the only point of cover we have, and that's when I took the round in the face. That knocked me out, which I didn't realize it at the time. I mean, you know, I don't know if you've been knocked unconscious, but you don't realize it happens. You're out and you're like, hey, what happened? And, but when I came to, I knew something had happened, not realizing I'd been knocked out, but I knew I was messed up. I'll never forget laying on my back and reaching up. I couldn't put thoughts together. It really rang my bell. And I remember reaching up and touching my face, and there was no nose. I remember in the, you know, moonlight that my gloves were stained with blood, and I thought, oh man, I've been shot in the face. Ooh. So yeah, it was kind of crazy, you know, and it's crazy, you know. It started to bleed out. The firefight lasted at least 35 minutes, and I don't know at what point I got hit in the face. I'm thinking it was probably in the first 5 minutes of the firefight. So I laid there while my guys tried to win the firefight and bring in that close air support, and lost a lot of blood. Thankfully, during one of my points of unconsciousness, my team leader ran forward under fire and dragged me back to the only point of cover we had, and then he got a tourniquet on me, and he saved my life. So,
yeah, jeez. How many guys were on your team or that you went in that night with?
There were, I'm not going to get into exact numbers we went in on the target with, but, you know, when we moved on this target, there were 9 of us. We got split, and it ended up being 6 of us that were in this direct firefight.
Do you have any idea how many guys they had?
We think 9 or 10.
Yeah.
But there wasn't anybody left to brag about it when it was over.
Exactly. Were they? And so you said they had set up like ambush positions when they were getting out of there. How did they have an idea that you guys were coming?
Well, I think they heard us, obviously, when we came in on the other target about 200 yards away.
Oh, so they scrambled and got into their spot?
They were set up probably thinking we were coming in the other house, and then we hit the house about 200 yards away, so that notified them we were there, and they ran out into their ambush positions, which, you know, we walked into.
You walked directly into.
So, yep.
Jeez, man. And so you say you're laying there in the moonlight, and you can see your bloody glove, and you knew you'd been shot in the face. I know I've seen where you thought about your wife and kids at that moment. Was it when you were thinking about them? Because I'm a dad as well, a husband and a father of 2 kids. So I tell people all the time, I'm a wreck, man. I'm like an emotional wreck now that I have kids. Anything can get to me. But you said they kind of pushed you through, or is that honestly what kind of gave you more of a will to live? Obviously you have a will to live. You guys are the top of the world of warriors on this planet, but did your kids, your wife and kids kind of, I don't know, give you those extra couple minutes that you needed to get to the medevac, or how did it go?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of both. I mean, you know, I don't know what people's faith is, but, you know, I was raised pretty strong Christian, not always the best Christian, but raised that way. So it really started in that moment as I laid there. I you know, for people out there that have ever died or come close to dying, it's a physical thing. You can tell when you're dying, like your body starts shutting down. You can feel it. You know, the cold that people talk about is very real because your body's starting to pool blood. It's not pumping blood to your extremities anymore. And you know, it's trying to hold the blood because you've lost so much. And that's what was happening to me. Even though I didn't realize it, I just got cold and realized, hey, I think I'm close to checking out. And I had that thought. I thought, all right, this is how I'm going out. And you know, it's an interesting thought to be faced with your own death. Not everybody gets. I even call it the luxury.
How old were you when this happened?
I was 33.
Okay, geez. So you I mean, you say you're close to checking out. You felt that. Did you feel like at peace or panic, or what was the, what, if you could think about going back there, what was going through your head?
Well, I was angry, really, to be honest. At first, I was angry just because I couldn't believe I'd allowed myself to get in this position. I couldn't believe the enemy had managed to get the drop on me, and I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of knowing they'd killed me in this dirty field here in Iraq. So that was kind of my first thought. Then I started thinking about my wife and kids, and I had thoughts of, man, I'm not going to walk my daughters down the aisle. I'm not going to raise my son to be hard and strong and be a good man, and I'm not going to be there to see my wife, and that made me sad. And it also made me start to look at, I could have done a better job living my life. It's funny, in those moments when you're in the final moments before death, it's not like you're going to look back, and I didn't go, man, I wish I had studied more tactics, or, gosh, I wish I had shot more. You look back on the people that, you love, your friends and family you surrounding yourself with. And I tell people that all the time, in the end, the only thing that's going to matter is the relationships you forged and sustained in life. And because that's what you're going to have to take with you. I talk about there's a quote from Tecumseh, the great Shawnee Indian warrior chief.
Yes.
And if you've seen Act of Valor, they
you
quote.
talking about at the end?
That's right.
Oh, my God. Okay, yeah, continue. I'm sorry.
But here's the funny thing about that quote. And there's a lot of guys out there, they want to quote that. And the quote, for those that don't know it, is, when your time comes to die, be not like those timid souls who weep and pray for a few more minutes. Sing your death song and die
like a hero going home. Yeah, man.
So, but here's the problem with that. They miss. Tecumseh, actually, there's a much longer thing that he talks about before those final lines. And what he talks about is living a balanced life. He talks about, judge no man so that he will not judge you, honor the things that you believe in and stand up for what you believe in, and be a good father and be a good husband and be a good brother and be a great warrior. He said, so that when your time comes to die, you don't have any regrets. You just go forward and you don't think twice about it. You're like, boom, it's go time. And I had failed to do that. I had focused way too much on my career and not enough time on my family. So I'm thankful that I got a second chance to try and fix that.
Man, it's unbelievable what you talked about. You brought up the Tecumseh, the whole, I don't know if you want to call it poem, whatever it is. It's at the end of Act of Valor, and it's crazy that you brought that up. This is for anyone that is listening or watching. It's the first time I've spoken to you, over the phone, Skype, whatever it is. We've emailed a bit back and forth, but I have a 3-year-old, and I read her that poem every night before she goes to bed. She asked me, Dad, what's Tecumseh? I read her the whole thing. So I mean, I know
Nice.
I know it all.
Oh, that's awesome. So you more than anyone know, because I've met so many guys that want to quote that. And I'm like, yeah, that's great. It's a cool mindset, but you're missing the point of what he was trying to say.
Yeah, trouble no man about their religion, all that. Like, don't you do your thing? Don't judge you, man. I mean, it's ridiculous how. I mean, you could just read that. If you just read that, you could. For anyone that should look it up if they haven't read it, you could just look at that and give it to your kids. And be like, hey, just read this every morning. You probably have a pretty solid kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's and we paint some things on my son's ceiling, and we have the end of that poem painted on my son's ceiling. Sing your death song and die like a hero going home. I figured that's great for a 1-year-old. Whenever he can figure it out, it'll be perfect for him.
All right, son, be hard.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm about to read the rest of the poem to him. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad I know it feel a little like corny or cheesy when I'm, because I'm probably like every other what do you want to call it? Like Monday morning quarterback, military loving guy that wants to read that poem and think about it. So at least I'm glad you know of it. You guys think it's decent?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I know a lot of guys who understand it for what it truly represents, and they want to live their life in that manner. And I speak about that all the time. And then there's some, and I would have been the same way. When I was a young, arrogant warrior, I would have looked at that last line and just thought, this is what it's all about. Being a badass, singing your death song and dying like a warrior going home. But the reality is, as you get older, especially more seasoned, more experienced warriors, and you see it in the SEAL teams, and I try and explain this to people. That's why my book was very different. I wanted people to understand that, all right, guys are warriors, but at the same time, they're much more than that. That's a part of who they are. Just like you. You're not just a football player. You're a dad, and you're a brother, and you're a husband, and it's no different from us. We go to PTA meetings, and we coach Little League, and when it's time to put your war hat back on, then that's what you do. You go out there and you take out the enemy, because we hope that our kids will never have to face that. My children and my children's children, that's the reason why all of us went and did what we did.
Do you think, obviously you have a huge, your many generations have been in the military. Do you want any of your kids to go in, or would you push them that way, or allow them, I would say?
I would absolutely allow them. Will I push them? No, I want them to make their own choices. If they want, the funny thing is, and my son's the oldest, he probably appreciates it the most. He has grown up seeing the massive effects of war. I've been to almost 50 memorials and funerals for Friends of SEALs. My son has known, some of these guys that have died. My son has seen the direct effects of war, both with me getting shot, to other friends of mine who are missing limbs, and now I run a nonprofit supporting wounded warriors and families of the fallen. So day in, day out, he has seen the direct negative impacts of war. And for him, he's like, I'm not really interested in that, which is fine. I want him to choose his path. And what I tell him is, the only thing I want you to do, and I tell all my kids this, I want you to find your passion, whatever that passion is. That's a great thing about living in this country. In the United States of America, we have the gift of freedom, where whatever your passion is, if you have the drive, the heart, and the tenacity to go after it, you can accomplish it. That's what I fought for. That's the American dream.
How old is your son?
He's 14.
Has he read the book?
He's read most of it.
I can't imagine what it would be like reading about your dad, like of what you've gone through and everything. That has to be like so emotionally confusing or scary, to think it's out there, and he did almost lose his dad, and it's all your kids, and it's out there. It's a story, and it's known. It's now you've turned it into this amazing message and helping so many different people out. But I can't imagine the mix of emotions. I think it's a great. It's got to be a great story for your kids. You talk about being diverse and coming from a pretty amazing background. Do you think they will? You think they recognize that now, or maybe when they get older, they think, you know what, I had a pretty amazing upbringing. This is different than most people's dads and most families. I feel like I live a little bit differently.
They don't now. I don't think they do, because this is their normal. They've grown up in it. They've met all these other wounded warriors. We've had the honor to, go to some pretty high-level places. My kids have met 2 presidents. That's pretty, that's not normal. But to them, it just is what it is. Someday I hope that they'll grow up. The greatest thing I love, I try and instill the great values to my kids. And I think one of the neatest things that's come out of this is my kids, they hang out with severely wounded warriors, and these are their heroes. Guys like Tyler Southern, who is a wounded Marine. He's wounded. My nonprofit's Wounded Warrior Ambassador. He gets out and sets the example. He's a triple amputee. My kids love him. Mike Schlitz, a wounded Ranger. Mike lost both arms above the elbow, and he was burned almost 95% of his body. My kids love Mike. So they no longer see injuries, regardless of where we are. They've come to understand that, some people are different, but, it's what's inside. And I love, because that's a lesson a lot of people don't learn until later in life. And it's pretty neat to see my kids, they just, to them, that is their normal. So
yeah, that's all they know. Yeah, all they know is this life that you've brought them up in. So I think I'm 30 now, and I feel like I look back at how I grew up. I was the youngest of 3 boys, and my parents and what they do. And, my dad's he's great at what he does. He's in sales, and he gives speeches, and he's a public speaker type guy. And I think now when I'm older, I even obviously it's nothing like going to war and being shot and doing that. But I have a lot of respect for what he does now. But I think it took a long time till you see that. So I think for your kids, it's going to be really cool for them, 10, 15, 20 years down the road when they can kind of look back and be like, man, this is what a story, what a story they have and what they learned and got to grow from. I mean, just the experiences that they've had and are going to have through you, man. That's something I think your kids are going to be all right. I don't know them. I've never met them, but I have a feeling they'll be all right.
We're blessed. They're pretty good kids. I mean, as with any kids, they'll push their limits every now and then. But I tell you what, they are. I'm very blessed.
Do you ever see? Remember, you were talking about how you were like a young, arrogant guy when you're in the teams. You ever see any of that little bit of your young self in your kids?
I see some. Well, yes and no. Every one of them are a little different. I'll see a spark of it, and I tell you, my oldest daughter is probably the most like me, which is kind of funny and dangerous at the same time. But I'll admit, my arrogance didn't really set in fully. I think I matured late, and I think it all kind of came to a head once I made it in the SEAL teams. And you got to think, I mean, here I was, this 20-year-old kid that now was wearing a trident. I was part of one of the most elite military forces in the world. And there's a lot of responsibility with that, but it was easy to kind of get enamored with this idea. And I think that kind of led to some of those things. And I talk about that. You gotta find that balance. You gotta stay humble in those situations. There's a time and place to let that beast unleash, and it's on the battlefield. It's when you're stepping into a dark room and you know that the enemy's on the other side. It's when some knucklehead is, threatening your family. Beyond that, come back to Tecumseh. Respect those around you.
That's right, man. You said you want to unleash that beast when you're going into a dark room and the enemy's waiting on you. Do you remember your first? Whenever, obviously, I'm not. You can't get into specifics, but do you remember your first time like engaging in real combat?
I would say I was on the periphery for a while. Combat's an interesting thing. There are guys that can be on combat operations where things can be happening and they never saw a thing. So that's the outer ring. The inner ring, when I was in Afghanistan, we got into some firefights, but we were kind of far out from the firefight. We were we were providing suppressing fire, but we weren't directly engaged. We were, the chances of us being shot. It was really Iraq the first time that I came into direct. I mean, like bullets flying, pinging off stuff around me, and recognizing that, hey, it's go time. Definitely, Iraq was probably much more an intense urban setting for me where we were, house to house. You were going door to door and you were entering places where you knew every door that you stepped through, there could be somebody on the other side, ready to shoot at you. And there were some rooms that we went into and that happened. So there isn't a level of apprehension. Tell guys, I think everybody has their own ritual before they go out on a mission. A lot of sports are like that too. We all have that mental ritual we go on. The difference in the military and the difference for me is before I went out, I went through my little ritual. And the last thing I did is I watched the slideshow of my wife and kids, and I put my computer away and I flipped that switch, and I knew that I might not be coming back. And you went out there, and that was the thing. I mean, I'm going to go. And you focused on the task at hand, and you tried not to think about anything else around you. I mean, you kind of had to have a little bit of a thought process of invincibility, that you were just going to go and go, regardless of what happened.
Is there time to be scared before you go into a place? Like, say you're breaching a door and you guys are going in, and there's a pretty solid chance you're going to be engaging people. Do you guys have time to be scared, or are you caught up in the moment?
Yes and no. The moment, training in the moment definitely carries you far. I mean, I was in, a big firefight, and I was less I mean, bullets were flying all over the place, but I was more focused on the job at hand, even though I probably should have been scared. I wasn't, just because I was focused on trying to make sure my guys were doing the right things and figuring out what else was going on. In some complex situations, you have more to think about than your own fear, your own life. I definitely remember the night that I was wounded, that target that we entered that night. Usually in a leadership position, I'm not the first man in the door. Usually I'm a little further back. And that night, things kind of got convoluted with the way the helicopter landed. So it ended up being me and my team leader, the first two guys in that door. And it was a real high-threat target. We were really expecting very heavy enemy resistance. And I remember running up to that door thinking, I'm going to step into a hail of gunfire. But I didn't stop because, you can't. It's what we do. You go through that door and you go after the enemy. And, thankfully that didn't happen. The hail of gunfire was waiting about 45 minutes.
Yeah. Well, good for you guys then. That's say you guys go out and you have a good whatever you want to call it. You go out and you have some targets. You say you take them out. You bring them in. You capture whatever you do. When you guys all get together as a team, say your team gets back to your base wherever you guys are staying, like that night or the next morning, what's the feeling like there?
It's definitely not, a big celebration or anything like that. It's a job. And obviously, there's excitement if you capture or you manage to get, a very high level target. That's a great thing. It's a great feeling. But at the same time, we go through the same things every time. We come back, everybody sits down, we debrief, what went right, what went wrong, what can we do better? Hey, clean your gear, rejock, and get ready to go again. It could happen tonight. It could happen tomorrow. But, that mission's done. Chalk it up as a win or a loss, whatever happened, and get ready for the next one.
Yeah, you guys are just like businessmen, just going about your day, closing deals basically over there, huh?
It is, and you have to treat it in that mindset. Otherwise, I think the emotional roller coaster. And some nights, I will admit, some nights you come back from a mission like, the very first big intense firefight that I was in, I came back and, man, I was on an emotional roller coaster. It took me all night to finally get to sleep. Yeah, I just couldn't come down.
How would you ever? I can't imagine. First of all, how you would sleep after that, and then, like other idiots, I feel like I'd want to call my wife and tell her about everything that happened, or call my brothers. Hey man, you should have seen it. Obviously, you guys can't do that. So you guys can talk about it amongst your team? I guess that's it, and doesn't leave that room, huh?
Right. And I never told my wife anything anyway. As a matter of fact, I told her we weren't doing anything, and then I got shot, and I kind of messed that all up. Because, I wanted to keep her calm. I didn't want her to be worried about us, so I'd just say, yeah, we're not doing much. It's kind of boring.
And then she gets the call that you've been shot and half your face was blown off.
Yeah.
So but I'm sure she's a strong lady, man. But so say, you got injured. It's a lot more than injured. Let me take a second here, if you don't mind. I want to read the note you wrote and you posted outside your hospital door. Is that all right if I read it real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want people to hear it, and let me know if I wrote it down wrong, too. This is what you posted outside of your hospital door. Was this pretty early on when you got back?
Yeah, it was about a week and a half. You can see, it was bright on there. But, it was about 10 days after I'd gotten to Bethesda Naval Hospital.
All right, I'm just going to try to read it quick because I don't know if everybody has heard it or not, but they should. Says, attention to all who enter here. If you are coming into this room with sorrow or to feel sorry for my wounds, go elsewhere. The wounds I received, I got in a job I love, doing it for the people I love, supporting the freedom of a country I deeply love. I am incredibly tough and will make a full recovery. What is full? That is the absolute utmost physically my body has the ability to recover. Then I will push that about 20% further through sheer mental tenacity. This room you're about to enter is a room of fun, optimism, and intense rapid regrowth. If you are not prepared for that, go elsewhere. So that's awesome, man. I love it. And one of my favorite lines right there is where you say, when you talk about pushing 20% further through sheer mental tenacity. So that is just what made you write that and post that? I know you've gotten some attention for that, and a lot of people have kind of saw that, and it went around and made its rounds around the internet, and you have a picture of it right behind you. But what made that, or what brought that about? Were you pissed at people coming in trying to feel sorry for you?
Yeah.
When I read that for the first time, that's what I got from that. I was like, oh gosh, this dude, I wouldn't, if I saw that sign, even if I wasn't going to feel pity for you, I wouldn't go in there like, this dude's going to kill me. I don't care if he's half blown up.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. I had a couple people come into the room, and they were, they were expressing quite a bit of pity. And, it was one of the first few times my wife had left the room. She went to go do something because she was my best nurse. She was at my side all the time, and I couldn't talk. My jaw was wired shut. I was trached. So the only way I could talk was by writing. I had, reams and reams of paper is how I would communicate. When she came back in, and I said, never again. Never is somebody going to come into my room feeling sorry for the wounds that I've received, because I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. And I just wrote that sign out. And originally it was on a 8.5 piece of paper. The original's somewhere around here. But like a couple days later, I had somebody else come into the room, and same thing. They were sad. And I told my wife, I said, hey, go find like the biggest, brightest piece of paper you can. And we transcribed it onto that bright orange piece of paper and stuck it on the door. And a couple days later, a teammate took his trident off and stuck it in at the bottom of the paper. And, it took on a life of its own after that.
Man, yeah, I think what you wrote in this and how it comes across, with how you're talking about pushing 20% further, and you did this for the country you love, for people you love, and supporting the freedom. It's like it's honestly like a movie when you read that. For me, it's like it's not even reality because it's so awesome, first of all, but that you actually did that, and you put it up. So I think, what do you think? There's anything honestly that you had as a kid, or you were born with, or that someone instilled in you that made you this, this kind of have this crazy drive that people think they have or they want to have, but they, when times get tough, like you've had, the toughest of all, you do something like this and you fight through and you make things better?
I have, I don't know, I guess I just have an intense level of mental tenacity. I can't, I also am very driven when people tell me I can't do something. Those are the two things that really drive me. So, people feeling sorry for the injuries that I had, I was like, no, I'm not going to stand for that. And, it's funny. I always caveat, that when we talk about it, I call it the sign on the door when we talk about it, because, there's a lot of wounded warriors out there that have that same mindset. They're amazing. I mean, I would encourage anybody out there, if you ever get a chance, see if you can go visit, some of these guys that are out there. Get to some of these events, meet some of these wounded warriors, meet some of these families of the fallen, because while some of them may need a push, most of them have that mindset. So I just say that sign happened to capture that spirit. I just happened to put it in writing. That's really all there is to it. And that's why I didn't keep it. I had the honor of being invited to the White House and meeting President Bush because of the sign, and I brought it with me, and he actually signed it, and we had it framed, and and we dedicated it. It now hangs in the Wounded Ward at the National Medical Center there in Bethesda. So, you should get some guys, and you guys should go there. You should visit some of the warriors. They would absolutely love it, and you could see the sign. It's funny. It's part of their VIP tour now, which I kind of find humorous.
I knew it was up somewhere. I didn't know that's where it was. All right, believe me, I need to do that. My wife was actually, she went there probably 4 or 5 years ago with a couple other wives and I think a congressman or someone from Wisconsin, and she met up with Bret the Hitman Hart for some reason. He was there, and she walked around and got to visit Wounded Warriors with Bret Hart, and I was equally pumped for Bret as I was the Wounded Warriors. I was sad I wasn't able to be there. So yeah, you're right. I need I need to get out there. But I'm going to start to we're going to wrap it up here. I know you've been very generous with your time, but I want to just your book. I read some things that people said about it. You've had endorsements by everybody: Robert Gates, Marcus Luttrell, some other team members I know I've seen in different special operations guys. But a lot of people call it obviously not a. There's not a ton, but there's a lot of books out there about missions and how guys have gone through training, and your book is very different, and it's more of a leadership book about humility and that balance that you've been talking about. I think that kind of comes across in your book. If you want to kind of talk about a little bit how the book even came about and how long it actually took you to kind of put all these thoughts down and get it out there.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, in the beginning, I never intended to write a book. Really what happened is coming that close to death, I got real reflective on life. And I've always written, and it was something to kill time. I mean, 4 years in hospitals and staying in hotels recovering, weeks and weeks on end that I'd have to recover and do all these post-op and pre-op appointments. And I just started to write. I started to write on all the lessons I had learned, different things that I remembered. And I'd written about 200 pages, and I showed it to some teammates and friends, and they were like, man, this is really good. You need to do something with this. So I went to my chain of command because I was still active duty, and there had been a few SEAL books that had come out over that time that the community wasn't that happy about, and so I didn't know how they were going to take it. So I had some of my leadership read it, and they said, we like it. It's very humble. It reflects well on, when we talk about being the quiet professional, not having that arrogance, having that quiet confidence. And they said, this is good. This is a good lesson. A lot of people can learn something out of it. It's a good, it reflects well on the community. So they said, go with it. So I moved forward, and Marcus connected me to his agent, and he took a look at it and said, yeah, we like it. And that connected me to John Bruning, who is my co-writer in this, a great guy. And John and I just became a team. He took those 200 pages and started working on them, figuring out how to bring the story together. And we did about 8 months of interviews and laid out the idea for the book. And, I think John wanted to quit in the beginning because he told me he's never had anybody that rewrote as much as what he's ever written. He would send me stuff, and I'd rewrite like 90% of it. And but we ended up making a really good team. He would dig deep and enable me to pull out details that maybe I'd forgotten about with time. And he also brought out, I think, a little deeper level of emotion than I probably would have talked about if he hadn't been there to kind of pull that out. So it made a great story, and I think it truly captured my life and the journey of a young kid growing up as part of this unit, and the journey of leadership, a journey of overcoming adversity, the love story of my wife and I, how we met and how she supported me both when I was a young knucklehead and all the way up until I was wounded. So from start to finish, it took almost 5 years from when I started writing and when I got in, and then probably 2 years from the time I got connected and signed the contract and got the approval from the Navy till when it was done.
So you said you had to get approval from the Navy. Do you have to turn in like your initial, like your rough drafts and everything, and they got to comb through everything and take out what's classified, or what?
I did. They really didn't have to take out anything classified because I work closely with, every command in the military has somebody called a security officer, and it's his job to manage classified and stuff like that. And, I've been in for 20 years. I mean, I kind of knew what we can talk about and what we can't. So, but anything I had questions about, I'd go to the security officer and I'd say, hey, can I talk about this, or how can I word this? So by the time, I had the final manuscript done, there wasn't anything that needed to come out. I mean, they reviewed it, and there were a lot of different reviews. You had to go through ethics reviews and legal reviews and all these different things. Of course, the security reviews. But thankfully, the book didn't change much. Funny, the biggest cuts came from the publishing company, which I will admit, professional editors do a good job of smoothing a story out and making it flow better. But when you're doing it, sometimes, you have ownership of those stories, and you're like, no, I don't want that to come out.
Yeah, they're probably these suits probably sitting in offices want to make sure a 40-year-old housewife soccer mom will read it and not be too freaked out by guts and gore. You're talking about half your face getting blown off. I'm guessing they try to dial some things back.
That's funny. That is one of the bigger things that we had to scale back on is the recovery part, talking about, because it's tough. You know, a wounded warrior, the journey of a wounded warrior is a very hard journey. I always say it's at a minimum, it's one step back, it's one step forward and two steps back, or I'm sorry, two steps forward and one step back. And sometimes though it's, one step forward and three steps back just because of infection risk. And we had to scale that down because they felt like, wow, people may start reading this and it'll depress them. They would want to stop. So we had to keep going on a high level. And I have a pretty good sense of humor, so we injected a lot of the humor that occurred along the way.
Yeah, I would. I'm pretty much done with it. I have a couple things I skipped over. Once you agreed to come on here, I wanted to make sure I pretty much finished the book. I've read all parts of it. Now I'm going to actually read it one more time fully through. I would skim some pages, and I wanted to make sure I got towards the end too before I talk to you. But I would recommend it to anybody. That's the thing. It's a real story. Like, it's real. It's not some guy sitting up there talking about being Rambo. You lived it, and you tell things that I think people can relate to, which none of us can relate to your life and what you have done on the battlefield for 20-some years in the military, but we can relate to the emotions you were feeling. And, I feel stupid saying whatever, being too big for your britches or whatever, as your grandparents would say, when you felt like you were younger and need a little bit of a change, and kind of coming through all that. And it's just one thing that I think is actually really cool about it was you seem to already make that transition from whatever your younger self was, or a version of it, before you got shot. It didn't take you getting your face blown off for you to realize that you were you wanted to change your pathway a little bit. And so I give you a lot of credit. And do you think that you did, before all of this happened, to kind of set everything in motion when you got wounded? Were you already on that path?
Oh, absolutely. When I made those mistakes and I got called on the carpet and I had to walk that long road of redeeming myself and earning back, my credibility as both a warrior and a leader, that was the longest, hardest road I've ever walked. There's nothing, your professional reputation is everything in the special operations community. So having to humble myself, and I almost left. I almost didn't think I could do it. I had told myself there's no way I can earn back the trust of the guys. And that road by far was much harder. Like, I'd rather get shot in the face again than have to walk down that road again. And so unequivocally, I tell people, that prepared me for these injuries that I sustained. After that happened, I was like, okay, no big deal. This sucks, but I've been through work.
Everything's easy now, man. After you've been had to fight to get your honor back, I guess, in a way, kind of in your own mind. But
yeah.
Real quick, I want to ask you. You were saying something earlier about when you were maybe hanging out with the guys too late, drinking, hanging out with your buddies. There's a guy that's pretty famous in the SEAL community from us outsiders, a guy named Old Demo Dick, Richard Marcinko. I've read a lot of his stuff. He always said, I remember in one of his books when I read it when I was young, he said he would never trust a man that wouldn't drink with him. Do you think is that legit? Is that real?
No, I don't think it's real. That's his opinion.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, you forge bonds hanging out together. But some of the best SEALs I know don't drink. Some of the best SEALs I know, probably could have their livers enshrined in like the, Alcoholics Hall of Fame too. It just doesn't, it doesn't matter. The thing is to have the ability to do the job. And as a leader though, there's certain behaviors you have to be careful of. There was a night where we were out and, I'm trying to catch koi fish out of a pond. That's not a good thing to be doing as a leader. Your credibility is kind of damaged when the next day you're trying to tell a guy, hey, I want you to go do this. And he's like, yeah, you're the moron last night that's trying to catch koi fish out of a pond all drunk. So absolutely, you've got to forge bonds with the people you work with. So on that side, I kind of agree with it. His book kind of took it to a whole nother level. And I bought it. You know, it's funny. I read that book right before I joined the SEAL teams, and I bought into it. I was like, you know, it is our job as SEALs to party like rock stars, and you know, the community wanted to try and get away from that. And as we grow, and the war changed that. I mean, that's the bottom line. There's no place for drinking and being stupid when you're out doing the things that we're doing. You know, you're going to jeopardize people. There's time for it back home, but once again, you got to find a balance. I got buddies who. They would come home, and I was guilty of it too. You know, I'd want to go out and drink instead of spending that time with my family. And life's about balance, man. That's the bottom line.
That's the overwhelming message I think you've got across, and I hope people, I think they'll definitely see that. But I think I'm going to wrap it up. But I just want to, really, really appreciate your time coming on here. I know you're super busy, spending over an hour with me. I went over time. I started a bit late, too, on you, so my apologies as well. But I wanted to make sure let people know about the book, obviously the Trident, the Forging and Reforging of a Navy SEAL Leader, and also your woundedwear.org that you started for wounded warriors. You know, you make, clothing for amputees and wounded warriors, right, that'll fit them?
You know, those originally, our mission's actually growing. It's kind of exciting. You know, we're going with a pride, power, purpose model now. And pride in the clothing and the modifications, power by doing empowered events. We take wounded warriors and families to the fallen skydiving. And now we're connecting them to purpose through connections to other organizations that are helping with employment, housing, you know, whatever needs that these guys and gals may have. We want to make sure that, you know, they have those opportunities and they're aware of them.
That's amazing. I was way off. I had like the first grade version of what you guys are doing. I had like the tiniest first idea you probably had in your mind about wounded wear.
Well, hey, and I'll admit, AJ, that's not your fault. I mean, we need to update the website. I mean, a lot of this has occurred over the last 6 or 7 months with the direction that we're going. So we got some big things in store. And, you know, the bottom line is veteran suicide rates are skyrocketing. Homelessness rates are skyrocketing. You know, I want to do everything I can to try and help these guys and make sure, you know, we all fought for the American dream. So I think if nothing else, these guys and gals should have the opportunity to accomplish theirs. And it's no guarantee. There's no guarantees in life. You know, I have a saying that I tell the wounded warriors and the families of the fallen: be a victor, not a victim. And we want to empower them to get out there and take the tools that they've learned from being wounded. You know, you lose a loved one, it makes you harder, it makes you stronger to go through those crucibles. So get out there and lead, set the example for the other Americans around you. And we'll give you the tools. You know, we'll connect you to organizations that can help you get a job and can help you, you know, find a house and all these things that we all need to accomplish it. But at the end of the day, it starts and stops with you.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to join. Where do I sign up? Do they take 30-years? Do they take 30-years in the military? I doubt it. 30-years that can barely swim and can't run distance. Does that work? Is that good for me? Can I make
we've had people that show up at buds like that. Actually, you know, the mentor I talked about, you know, Vince Peterson, he was pretty old when he went through too. So.
Well, good. I think a lot of people from reading your book and listening to you speak, I know you go around and you speak and give motivational talks and everything, so it's a huge honor to have you on here. So I want to thank you once again. Woundedwear.org. Get the book as well if you guys are listening. And once again, Jay Redman, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and hopefully I'll have you come on a little bit later, sometime down the road, and we'll get a little bit more story, because I could ask you questions for probably 10 to 15 hours about everything about your life, because it's all interesting to me, man, how you guys live, the true, real warrior, and you have that balance. So I appreciate it. Thank you once again.
AJ, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.